Namaste, Mitch. Welcome to Seva Transformation Academy's vidcast recording. As you know, I'll be recording this as a video, but we'll also distribute it as an audio file. So I'll send you the links. But Happy New Year. Thank you so much for sharing your time and coming on our platform to share your wisdom. I've loved reading all your posts on LinkedIn, so heartfelt. Amazing, amazing. So, and he's a psychotherapist, a long-term practitioner of Vipassana meditation. Most of you are familiar with that. And he's also a lecturer, loves photography. And so if you ever see any of his posts on LinkedIn and some of the social media platforms, he's been a student of Baba Ram Das, and so he's very active in heartfelt musings of what are the current affairs in the world, and he basically taps into the emotions of it. And I just love reading your posts, Mitch, as I mentioned, and that's how we connected, really, through one of his soulful posts, and that's how we got chatting. And I've now invited him over to our platform so he can share his wisdom and thoughts on what we're going to talk about today, right?
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a really honor to meet with you in this way and to bridge so many miles, so many oceans, but to be together in this important time.
Yes, this is the magic of technology, right? And I feel like some of the ways that the pandemic has brought the world together is this, the platforms that we share. When I spoke with you last, we were chatting about what got you started connecting with the globe. You said you felt an inspiration. Would you like to share some
Sure.
of that? Yeah.
It came quite unexpectedly. I have a full private practice in which I see clients, and in the 10 minutes in between, I felt this call to start writing something, and what came out of me was hope. I wrote a piece about hope, and without any experience in social media or posting, I put it up on LinkedIn. And then as the global suffering increased, I felt this sense that I needed to step up more deeply, that the world needed both hope and wisdom and compassion and a light to be able to navigate so many dark nights of the soul. And so then I began posting daily. And so for the last couple of years, more recently on the Ram Dass group platform, but primarily on LinkedIn, my posts have gone globally. And so that's been very powerful. The universal need and the language of the heart and soul, independent of where we are.
So well put. Exactly. I feel the authenticity that comes through your writings is what I felt is the biggest need. And I think that's what you're calling heart and soul language. Yeah, this is the magic of, bridging the gap, as you mentioned. I love those words as well, because, right now there's so much chaos in the world, with all the divisiveness that's there politically, in our socioeconomic status, and all sorts of health issues showing up. So there's a lot of factors that are causing all the divisiveness. How is it going over there where you are?
And so here, the entire country is on fire with COVID. And even though the Omicron variant has not been as bad, still the hospitals are full, a lot of terror and a lot of collective sorrow. There's the grief for those that we've lost, but also the loss of the life we've known. And so part of what has been important for me is the convergence of my almost 50 years now doing Vipassana meditation, doing that intensive training back in the early 70s, with my understanding as a therapist, and really trying to calm people and orient them to both open-heartedness, but also stillness and calm. To your point, in the midst of the frenzy, to be able to calm down.
That's powerful. And in your practice, let's go a little bit into your field of work that you do as a therapist. What inspired you to do what you do? How did you get started in the therapy side of things, and then also be a Vipassana student? Do they connect, or are they?
They do, actually. I mean, as a teenager, I always wondered about what made people move. And so found myself inviting people early on in high school to share what was happening. And people, there was a sense of presence and inquiry pretty soon into my adolescence. And then at age 20, while just second year of college, I had a roommate who had just come back from a 6-week Vipassana retreat. And he invited me to join him in our space. And I did 10 days. And then I immediately, a few months later, did a month. And then soon after that, 3 months. And so from 20 to 40, every 6 months, I was somewhere in the United States training intensively on retreat. And so the convergence of the training as a therapist with my meditation and mindfulness work really has kind of opened up other dimensions of what I do, right? And so when I said earlier about helping people calm down, it's really looking at their minds and what are the stories we're telling ourselves. And so I've been very active in helping people compose their life. I'm also a photographer, to compose their life in a way that has both vibrancy and calm.
Oh, so beautiful. And what are some of the tools you give them to do that in your practice?
Well, I mean, certainly first and foremost is introducing people to mindfulness, to recognize that they don't need to get on every thought train that pulls up in front of their house. And really this present moment orientation, which for me has been the real antidote to navigating this. You know, really coming to the moment without running up ahead. There's a story of a man who paints a picture of a tiger on a rock, takes it to be real, and runs away. And so we have a tendency to be great painters and paint things that don't exist. And so I offer an understanding and a window in to the mind and having some choicefulness about it. We think about mindfulness, we think about choicefulness, you know, having the opportunity to decide.
Yeah, so well put. Let's just take that in, huh? Choicefulness, and allowing ourselves to really firstly calm down, be present to this moment, and realizing that we have choices. We can make a choice other than what the mind is painting on the so-called rock. Yeah. Yeah, to tell you honestly, it's not so different in Australia as it is in America. The numbers are going up. There's a lot of conflict, with who's who and who should we listen to. And it's been carrying on for the last 2 years, So, I mean, it's been going on for a long time now. All of the uncertainty, all of the um, triggers for all of this unrest, personal unrest, and then it turns into collective in communities. And mental health is one of those things I think a lot of people put to the side for a while, but in the last 2 years I've also seen a spike in more interest, and concepts like, not concepts, but topics like yoga and meditation are booming now
Right.
as tools for transformation, transforming the mind and how to perceive life, perceive ourselves and life. And this is really good that it's also making its way, or has been present in your practice for such a long time. It's great to know that you're also utilizing those tools to initiate them, really. So many people won't trust the unregulated practices, right? It's meditation and yoga aren't industrialized or unregulated. So and it all comes down to daily practices. So talking about your clients and what you're seeing around you, you were mentioning something about grief and loss. Could you speak to me a little bit more about that and how this is an emerging problem or a social problem at the moment that you're dealing with? And you're teaching workshops on grief or dealing with loss as well, aren't you?
Yes, over the last 40 years, I have been lecturing around the United States on grief and loss, on how to have courageous presence to sit with someone in loss. And, normally we think about loss as in terms of death or divorce or a breakup or loss of a job. But here there's a deeper kind of loss, the loss of safety, the loss of the sense of the known as we're thrust into the unknown, the loss of control, the loss of connection, of touch, of the freedom of movement. And so there's a real malaise in our spirit, in an unnamed, unspoken grief. And so there's a collective sorrow that I hear and see and feel in both the people I work with and globally, those who are responding to my writing. And so first and foremost, it's for us to be able to affirm and name and claim that we're mourning. And it's not about comparing losses, mine versus yours, but the grief of the life we had wanted to be living, our plans, our hopes, weddings, anniversaries, ways in which we celebrated and came together were in an instant shattered. And so there's still an unfolding grief around that as the surges continue. And this loss of a sense of safety. The dilemma is that what's happening is awakening old experiences of feeling unsafe in our bodies, in our home, in our life. Those who have experienced any kind of sexual assault know that they live with that trauma of the unexpected. And so the current environment breeds an awakening of old anxieties and old trauma. And loss is at the heart of that.
Wow. That is so helpful, Mitch, because one of the biggest problems in our society has been, that I've seen within people that come for just solutions for fixing something superficial, like, oh, I'm having digestive issues, or I'm having problem sleeping, all of this. These are all signs of anxiety and disorder, or an imbalance. And then when you scratch a little bit more, you dig a little bit deeper, this is what we're talking about, really, the past stuff coming up and showing and expressing itself as so many ways. It expresses itself in a physical way, mental way, emotional way. And one of the biggest things I think people face, and including myself on my journey too, I felt one of the blocks were to really just name it, name
Right.
what it is personally. That is beautiful. And thank you so much for clarifying what to look for, when we are
Right.
trying to name it. Yeah, because it looks different for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where the winds of anxiety and grief and terror feel disproportionate to what's happening, then to look and see, to inquire, what does this feel familiar to? What else have we known? The loss file is deep and old, and one loss brings up and unearths losses that we've not resolved. And so those are all coming to the surface. And since the natural tendency is to move on from our grief, to put it away, now there's a sense of being inundated by a tsunami of feeling without understanding the source.
And so what is a good way to connect to this? What do you suggest is a good way to connect to these overwhelming feelings and sensations of discomfort?
Right.
And yeah,
I think now more than any other time, having a meditation practice is absolutely essential to be able to ground oneself so that we're not carried away by the energies that are just pulling us out. We're really being inundated and assaulted energetically, emotionally through media. And so one way to protect our energies is to establish some boundaries around our exposure, not to get pulled in to everything that's happening, to really regulate it. So one is a meditation practice. The other is boundaries. The other is to reach out to a healer, a helper, a therapist, to have a guide and an ally. Yes. People are very afraid about that, afraid of that vulnerability. And they can think about it as an emotional Sherpa. If you went to Nepal, you might get a Sherpa to help guide you around the mountain. In the same way, we need a sacred Sherpa now to guide us around our early life, our current life, and what is being unearthed. And so getting a consultation can be helpful.
Yes.
The other is to look and see whether your functioning is, whether your experience, your emotional destabilization is interfering with your functioning. Grief is one thing, but when grief turns to depression, to hopelessness, to thoughts about perhaps giving up or harming oneself, it's imperative to recognize those signals and perhaps get stabilized on a medication. There's no shame in the necessity to stabilize one's mood if you're not able to function. And symptoms of that are really struggling to get out of bed, not having any sense of hope about the future, loss of appetite, loss of energy, and as I said earlier, thoughts about harming oneself or hopeless or helplessness. So those are some things that can be immediately important.
Yes, that's great. That's amazing. Thank you so much. But those are really helpful tools in just getting started, and then ultimately we all have to do this work together, right? It's no one's
Right.
alone in this. So collectively, whoever's going to watch this and listen to this, you're not alone. And the work is, as you know, meditation is a solo journey, but with the guidance of a good teacher, you can do the work without, like you said, attaching or painting that picture and then, convincing yourself that I am my thought, and all the Eastern teachings teach us how to detach, how to be objective about what work we do. But then there are some people that are resistant to this, right? What would you say to those people that are resistant to not wanting to look at it because they're afraid of change? And some people, they're very resistant to change because they think other things, they'll think their mind will convince them of other stories that, it's too late, or this is too hard, or no, this is not, the value systems can come in.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, not to think about whether you see a counselor or whatever it is you do as having to redo your whole life and personality and go back in time and talk about your mother. No, not that. To really learn some tools, to develop some life tools to deal with what's happening, and just to dip their toes in the waters of that. I remember going to Ram Dass's home some years back when we were both living in California, and I shared my tale of woe, and he gave me wisdom, and I was not yet ready, resistant, as you just said. And he looked at me with enormous love, and he said, suffer on. Suffer on.
That's amazing.
And so I did until I was ready to not. And so, when we're driving and smoke comes out of the hood of our car, normally we know to pull over. We would not wait typically for the engine to catch fire to jump out of a window. And so, to your point, people can resist all they want, but when they find themselves engulfed in the kind of suffering that destabilizes their life, it makes it harder to repair the car.
So good. So good. Suffer on. That's going to be my tagline for the next year, this year, 2022. Actually, that's very powerful. That's very powerful. I feel this is very potent. This is a very potent time where, we've realized that, governance has done what it could have done. Right now we're at the precipice of whether we go forward taking responsibility, or do we just shrink into some sort of a pool of suffering, like you said.
Yes.
And so vaccine or not, we've still got to look after our digestive system, immune system, mental health, all sorts of body related body mind related issues, you've always got to open the boot up and have a check yourself. You know, you can't take a
Yes,
pill and just go,
absolutely.
right. That's
You know, the
amazing.
other,
Yeah.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's it. I just, yeah.
The other piece of this story is for long-term practitioners of yoga or meditation, whatever your spiritual practice is, at the end of every one of my retreats, the teachers would say, congratulations, the first half of your retreat is over. The second half is about to begin. Anyone can sit, as I did, in extraordinary bliss on retreat with right conditions. But as Ram Dass's co-teacher, Stephen Levine, very beautiful soul, used to say, can you keep your heart open in hell? And so using this pandemic, using what is being triggered, using having to wear a mask as your teacher, yoga, meditation, what have you, is an opportunity to get free. That is what Ram Dass meant when he talked about grist for the mill of awakening. At the moment he had his stroke, he realized that he was not where he wanted to be in his spiritual journey and had to go back and do deeper work. Wow. And so for me, all of this is an opportunity for me to be disentangled from the things that create suffering and to open my heart more deeply, you know, right? To transcend the polarization that grips the globe in countless ways, to use this kind of estrangement of the soul that we're seeing to rise up and to join that collective sorrow by collective unity, you know, to really be in the we, not the I and you.
And simultaneously doing the self-work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there is no other way.
Absolutely.
And how are things looking for you in your own social circles? I mean, how are they, how is it?
There's a range of people being terrified. Others of my friends are also seeing this as opportunities.
That's good.
To practice, and just staying connected. That's another tool that's crucial. At the beginning of the pandemic 2 years ago, I reached out to two men who I trained with almost 40 years ago in my first master's program. We hadn't spoken in that many years, and we picked up where we left off. And it gave me an appreciation of the power of connection right now. Just as you and I'm talking to you the other side of the world, to open up virtual calls with people that you haven't spoken with in a long time. Are you still there? I was thinking about you. And so in my social circle, we're staying connected. We're having each other's back.
That is exactly it. And then, you know, there's been a lot of culling of my not relationships, but connections that are just dead, you know, because of yes, but it is such a necessity, you know, in this time, in this day and age anyway. I feel as much as we've been isolated, one of the lubricators of all this, you know, disjointedness has been that connection that we can develop over just a WhatsApp text or something that instigates something with someone that you feel a connection to, someone that you can reach out and check in on, you know, and I think we've lost that. Some of us have lost that. It's not prioritized because I feel like, because it's been such a, and I'm just sharing what I have noticed in my circles. I feel like the political narrative has directly affected so many of our minds, in thinking that we're all thinking very different things. It's better not to talk about things, and it's best not to share things at this point in time, because it can easily, like like ignite a fire or something, or disagreements, etc. Right? It's a bit of a sensitive time like that. And I've noticed that even I think most people that I would have counted on, they basically started to behave like this, and I could understand why. At the same time, I feel it's good to hear you say it, that is actually one of the things we need to work on as part of continuing the practice of connectivity.
Right.
Yes, because I think, especially in the yoga path, there's this feeling of, oh, it's my journey, it's a solo journey, and even the meditation path, when you're just doing your own practice, sometimes you isolate yourself, and that's by default. But then when it comes to living in the world, this connection, yoga is all about relationship. Yeah. And like you mentioned, the work is in whatever's in front of us. So one of the things that you mentioned is like this connectivity. It touched a point in my heart, because I feel right now a lot of people are acting from fear, as you said, maybe fear of loss again. I don't know if that's one of the fears that are stopping them from connecting or reaching out or checking in the fear of maybe offending or not seeing eye to eye. Yeah.
Part of what's happened here, which is really the cataclysmic loss, is that now each of us do not feel safe with one another. To your point, you're talking about what you share, but never before has contact, whether it's hugging or proximity, been something that we needed to be afraid of, that we loved freely. We came together in a sense of the importance of love and that kind of safety. And so now, as I walk down the street, people will walk to the other side, because as humans, we now represent something dangerous. And now for those in this polarity of vaccinated, unvaccinated, it's another place of divisiveness that has created a tsunami of judgment and estrangement within families, within friendships. And I think that's the real great tragedy in this story, is that we've moved to a place of distancing at a time when we most definitely needed the bridge to be open. Obviously, there's a certain need for safe distance around protecting ourselves. However, having said that, there's a deeper distancing in heart and soul in this kind of alienation that you described. And that breeds a kind of a loss of well-being in our souls, that it's not enough just to do individual work. It is the balance the Sangha, of the community, and also our own path. So that's something to really look at. What have we done to us to create, deeper walls? And for me, the Dalai Lama said, whenever possible, be kind, and it's always possible. And so what's happened to me over these 2 years is a real deepening of that commitment, that aspiration to be loving, to be kind, to not pull away, but to open up. And my writing has really come out of that place. One of serving, one of service.
Yeah. That's powerful. I was actually conversing with a friend of mine who's just moved into a community where there are 10,000 other people that are not subscribing to all of this narrative of divisiveness and fear and all of this. And he was saying that, there will be so many people that won't come forward and talk, and talk about their experience of this in a frank way or in a healing way, because there's just that deeper wall, as you mentioned, and it takes a little bit of self-reflection to actually be in touch with why did the wall even come up between me and the people that I know. But he also said that, right now is dependent on what season I feel a cycle of life you're in also plays a part, because I feel people that are younger than me have a different sense of, processing all of this and coming up with their own boundaries, as am I. And then as are you, there seems to be various factors influencing our decision making, and despite having a spiritual practice or all sorts of wisdom in place, there's still this boundary that happens to be there because of who we are at this point in time of life. Maybe some people are parents of young children because children are getting vaccinated, have to get vaccinated too now. So a lot of people are facing this dilemma because they're not wanting to be a part of the system, but then they are in the system, and so there's a lot of like pull and push. So and then they have single friends, or they have people that are not in that system. They don't have to be. So there's this wall by default, because of the season of life they're in, right? And it's just so much energy. People have to spend so much energy to come together and actually have these conversations of connection. So yeah, that's what I heard, and so that friend of mine said something that was like potent in my mind, because it gave me a little bit of peace of mind that, just in accepting that everybody is in their own place in life as well, and they're holding their own truth, they're in their truth, as am I, as are you. We're all in our truth. And it doesn't have to be a conflict that we speak our truth in, or in a combative way, or in any way that is going to create more divisiveness, but rather just do you, like the saying goes, just do you. Because right now, no one has the answers, nobody has the answers. It's just, we've been given an opportunity to learn who we are, especially when crisis hits, and then we get to know what tools do we have. Do we have the tools? No, we reach out then, and do our own little stock take. And yeah, so I really like what you said, and that gives me shanti as well, with knowing that the psyche works this way, that, you know, we are going to look at it at some point. I believe that too. And also that we are all holding our own truth at the moment. Everything is temporary, right? Anicca.
Right. You know, it's not the first experience of hatred, divisiveness, and estrangement here in America, and still people of color, African Americans, are in the 60s, not so long ago, were not permitted the same human rights. In Europe, at that time, Jewish people were treated as less than. And so hatred has a long history. But the antidote to the current incarnation, from my perspective, is honoring each other's right to hold the truth as we are seeing it. And that means honoring the systems that are booting up. We can make the choices we make, but we also have to allow and honor other people to then make the choices that they're making.
Exactly.
And so whether here you cannot go in to a store without a mask, you cannot go into certain places without having been vaccinated. So we get to choose not to be vaccinated, and they get to choose how they want to keep safe. And so, as I tell couples that I've provided therapy for years, let us agree to disagree. Let us honor each other's right to hold and stand in our truth without having to debate or duel about whose truth is more accurate.
Oh,
And
so
for
good.
me, that's the path through the divisiveness.
That is so good. Oh, last of these types of questions, I think we've touched on a lot, right? There was a lot that you spoke of that is so useful for this time we're traversing through. When you say, let's agree to disagree, I think a lot of us will disassociate with all the anger and the emotions that we feel to do that. How do you suggest they dissolve the burning sensations of emotions that rise from having to agree to disagree?
Right. That's really the predicament. And it's not about pretending not to have strong feelings. Long time ago, in my own partnership at the time, I realized that resolution was more important than being right. And reconciliation was a higher aspiration than proving a point or being right. And so the question is, what is your goal? Is your goal to stand in your righteous anger and indignation? Or do you want to meet on this bridge of despair that we find ourselves in and find common ground? And so if you're going to bring your righteous rage, then we're not going to hear each other. And so finding a place to meet that isn't about right and wrong, but about this common ground of our shared humanity, and that we're afraid, we don't want to be controlled, we don't want to be unsafe, but we all have different ways of coming to that. And so to answer your question, if your goal is resolution and reconciliation, then you need to decide whether you're going to lead with your emotions. Nelson Mandela decided when he came out of prison that he didn't want to remain angry at his captors because he didn't want to remain imprisoned. So the question now is, do you want to suffer on, as Ram Dass said to me, or do you want to be free?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And what do you want to be free of?
Yes. Yes. I feel like you've given us so many takeaways. Thank you so much. It's really, it's very, specific stuff that people can action and ponder on. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
What are you working on at the moment, if you don't mind sharing?
I'm working on a book of these writings that came through me that I also got to bear witness to. And I'm working on deepening my understanding to be available, to be helpful. I'm getting calls from people around the globe asking for a different kind of light. And so I'm working on listening to where I can show up and where I can be of help.
Yeah.
And so I have a private practice. I have some clients from Switzerland, from other parts of the world. I'm still teaching and I'm writing daily. If anybody wants, the Ram Dass group is open not just to devout followers of Ram Dass, but to people who want spiritual sangha. They can find me there and reach out to me there, or on LinkedIn,
Yes.
or on Facebook.
Yes, I was just about to ask you, can people actually reach out to you for consults, as in therapy
Absolutely.
consultations? Oh, awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll actually grab your details and put it in the comments below our
Yes.
video. But also, if you don't mind sharing it verbally here, so people can look you up, for those of us that are listening.
So they will be able to see the spelling of my name.
Yes.
And they can reach out to me on Facebook. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Those are, or they can reach out to me on the Facebook group and just send me a note that they would like to set up a consultation and to see whether there's reason to work together. People arrange globally for the financing of meetings through PayPal or whatever means they have. And so, yeah, that's definitely an opportunity to connect or ask questions, or reach out.
And yes, personally, I have to say to anyone listening and watching that Mitch is a very heart-centered person in general. So I can only imagine if you connect with him for therapy or any kind of help, he'll be so accommodating. He'll be the best tool for you in 2022, I feel.
Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. I mean, I'm so grateful that we've been able to bring you on our platform of, on Seva Transformation Academy is all about transforming, transcending, and doing it in a natural way. So the natural philosophies that, we can practice and embody, especially now, right now is a time of great change, personal, collective, global. So having people in every community is so helpful that, you are speaking the same language, maybe in a different robe, as I am, or as the Dalai Lama, or as the sadhus and all that, it's the same philosophy, it's running through us. And this is really helpful to know that we're not alone in this, and thank you so much for taking the call from your soul and just getting on the keyboard and starting to connect. It's amazing. Yeah, so I honor you for being in your truth, Mitch, and would love to invite you back some other time, and invite you to talk about whatever is the topic at that time. But would you love to come back? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know you were also going to ask me about resources, and
Oh, yes, yes.
there are two I would really highly recommend, both on YouTube. One
Mhm.
is the author of the book, Radical Acceptance. Her name is Tara Brach. And so she has so many Dharma talks that she's giving on
Yeah.
lots of subjects. And the other, one of my beloved teachers, Jack Kornfield, you can go to spiritrock.com or just look him up, or old Ramdas talks. It's important to connect to the sacred right now in
Yes.
whatever form speaks to you. And those are
Yes.
two that are very powerful.
Jack Cornfield, Tara Brach. She's got
Yes,
podcasts as well, actually. Tara Brach
yes,
shares meditations on podcasts as well.
yes.
Radical Acceptance and Baba
Also Sharon
Ramdas's.
Ramdas, and also Sharon Salzberg is another teacher that is quite wonderful to tune into what she's doing, so that we find ways to anchor ourselves as we navigate the windstorms of our life.
Yeah. Yes. Beautiful. Was there anything else you'd like to share, Mitch, before we part today?
I'll end on just this quote by Viktor Frankl, survivor of concentration camps. He said, well, actually, I take that back. It was Camus, the philosopher. He said, in the midst of winter, I found in me an invincible summer. And I encourage people to hold on to their hope, to find the invincible summer in the midst of the winter of this pandemic, in whatever way you're experiencing it, and hold on to your hope. Don't give that up. Even in the midst of all that's changed, what hasn't changed is our capacity to love one another, to connect with one another, and to be present for each other. The pandemic, COVID cannot touch that.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening over there. And it was lovely chatting with you. And we'll have you back here in no time. So I'll
Absolutely.
connect with you very soon. Thank you, Mitch.
Okay.